Hello everyone, welcome to a very important session of the bold lessons by Overseas Prep Lab. Today we are going to talk about one of the greatest equalizers of life. Students often come and ask me how can they do well in the data sufficiency section, which is now obviously a part of the data insights section on the GMAT exam. Some of these guys who come and ask me this question are actually quite good in math. In fact, some of them are better than me. No, I mean it. But where they are unable to get a high score on the GMAT quantitative section is that they are treating this as a math test. Whereas really the GMAT quant section is, as the name itself, a quantitative reasoning test. So when I sit down to analyze the tests of my students as to where they are losing marks, the story is invariably the same every time. If it's a normal math problem, which is kind of rare on the GMAT, then they get it right very quickly. But when it is a cleverly worded or an obtusely worded or an abstractly worded question like data sufficiency questions usually are, which is usually not just testing your math skills, in fact sometimes there is no calculation to be done, but it's actually testing your critical thinking ability or your hypervigilance. That's when they start losing marks. The underlying math used to create GMAT quant problems is actually not that complex. But like I joke in all my GMAT quant classes, GMAC has this unique ability of converting even a 2+2 question into a 95th percentile question through abstract wording and obtuse kind of wording and phrases. So before we look at an actual data sufficiency question, let's first understand the 3 best practices that you need to remember before you attack a question. First and foremost, understand the kind of data sufficiency question at your disposal. Is it a value-based data sufficiency question or is it a yes-no based data sufficiency question? Number 2, do not go to the statements before you understand the actual problem statement that is given to you. And number 3, always analyze and leverage harder. If you think that something is quite straightforward, dig deeper. It may not be as straightforward as you think. Let's now look at a question to understand how this works. So this is a question from the GMAT official guide. Let me read out the question for you. The participants in a race consisted of 3 teams with 3 runners on each team. A team was awarded 6 minus n points if one of its runners finished in nth place, where n lies between 1 and 5, both inclusive. If all of the runners finished the race and if there were no ties, was each team awarded at least 1 point? Let's first analyze only this much before we go to the statements. Now obviously this is how the data sufficiency answer choices will look like. I am sure all of you are acquainted with it. Now before we go to the answer choices, we will first analyze the problem statement. Let's first understand what is given to us and what is required. Now if you assess the question stem that is given to you, and you can see it here, you should summarize all the given information that is there. If you look at the question again, the given instructions suggest that there are 5 points that will go to the first place, 4 points will go to the second place, 3 points will go to the third place, 2 points will go to the fourth place, and of course 1 point goes to the fifth place. What does this mean? That overall there are 15 points to be distributed. Now what is the goal? As far as the question is there, the goal is to determine whether each team got at least 1 point. That's the question stem, right? So now it's time for us to go to the statements and assess each statement one by one. Now that we know, we are clear in our mind what is given to us, we can go to the statements and attack them one by one. So statement 1 says no team was awarded more than a total of 6 points. Now you can see here very clearly that this upper limit of 6 guarantees that each team must have received at least 1 point. There is no way to get a total of 15 points without each team contributing some points to the total, isn't it? That is, 2 into 6 is equal to 12. That can't get you to 15, isn't it? So this statement is quite clearly sufficient on its own. So what do we know here? Which answer choices must be the ones? A or D. That means you can eliminate B, C and E straight away. Now that you know that the answer could be A or D, what do you need to check? Now we obviously need to go to statement 2. Let's read statement 2 together then. Statement 2 says, no pair of teammates finished in consecutive places among the top 5 places. Now, this one takes a little more time to assess and identify, isn't it? Because it might cleverly seem to be sufficient at first. But and that's why you have to leverage harder. It can't be that straightforward, isn't it? Remember, if you go back to the main question, it did say one very interesting thing. It said, if all of the runners finished the race and if there were no ties. Now, when GMAT gives you statements like that, obviously they do have some significance. It's not just given for anybody's health. So you have to kind of dig deeper and leverage harder here. Now, for the second statement, let's consider two cases. Let's take case 1. Each team does get at least 1 point. Now, in a situation like this, you can see that it is coming up to 15 points very easily, with each team A, B and C getting at least 1 point. But there could be a second case also. Take a look. Here's case 2. In this case though, as you can see here on the screen, each team does not get at least 1 point. Isn't it? You can see here, team C does not get any points. There is a discrepancy here, isn't it? Which means that clearly statement 2 is not sufficient to answer the question. So what is the correct answer for this question? It is answer choice A. That is, statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question. A few parting thoughts before we end this lecture on data sufficiency. Focus on information that can entrap you when you are doing a data sufficiency question. For example, look out for misleading information. Look out for abstractly worded concepts. Look out for those mechanisms and cons in answer choices that will improperly leverage information. Those are the ones that you have to watch out for. Secondly, and as we saw in this question, learn how you can leverage all the hidden clues within the data sufficiency questions to get the correct answer. Let me tell you a very simple example. Always consider all the restrictions carefully. If a question says that x is a non-negative integer, I can bet you $1,000 that 0 matters in this particular question. Otherwise, they would have just simply said x is a positive integer. At Overseas Prep Lab, we understand all these traps that data sufficiency sets for you, and we make you practice enough official questions that will help you understand how you can beat data sufficiency and prove that you are smarter than your own country pool. So keep watching our GMAT webinars, keep attending our GMAT classes, and keep visiting the bold lessons for more such meaningful insights on GMAT topics.